Hi, and welcome to today's episode of Women's Health Unwrapped. I'm going to start with a few stats today, which is a little bit different from how I usually kick off an episode, but I think you'll understand why. Did you know that back pain is a leading cause of disability worldwide, and it affects around 90% of the global population at some time in their lives? And in developed countries like the UK and the US, said that around 70% of people will get lower back pain at some point in their lives. It's estimated that 8 million UK adults suffer from chronic back pain, and that costs the economy about £10 billion a year, and that's 7 million plus lost working days, which I think is just absolutely staggering when you hear those numbers. And that's due to employees needing to take time off work, of which they say 22% of British people have had to take up to 5 months off work due to back and joint pain. And over half of British people have lived with bone and joint pain for more than 12 months. It can have a disruptive impact on daily life. It can really take over what you're able to do at work and at home and limit your capabilities. Your back affects so much because obviously it's the centre of your body and it's fundamental to almost every way that you move and how you function. So when it goes wrong, it can be very debilitating and often life-changing. So why am I talking about this? This week is Back Care Awareness Week, and it's all about raising awareness of back pain and educating on prevention and management and encouraging people like you to prioritise spinal health. And to help me do that, I'm joined by the lovely Charlotte Wood, who is a workplace wellbeing specialist and Pilates teacher, specialising in lower back pain. And we've got so much that we want to talk about and share with you today and help you to really see why this is such an important topic for everyone, but especially for us women. So welcome to the podcast, Charlotte.
Thanks, Nicola.
Yeah, it's staggering. Yeah, great to have you as well. I'm really looking forward to tapping into more of your knowledge because those stats are just huge, aren't they? They really do paint quite a clear picture of how widespread and severe back pain can be.
Yeah, absolutely. And like you said in your intro, really debilitating as well. So I think for anyone who's listening who's had back pain, they'll know exactly what we're talking about. It's that sudden, oh my goodness, I can't move. I can't suddenly put my shoes on. It hurts to brush my teeth. For people who are listening who haven't had back pain, lucky you. And, protect the spine and the back that you've got. But they'll probably know somebody who's had back pain because, like you said, the stats are huge.
Definitely. So before we explore more of back pain and the tips that you can give us to build strong spinal health, what would you say right now is your most impactful healthy habit that helps you to stay well and strong?
So being a Pilates teacher, I feel really lucky that I do practice Pilates every day, whether it's because I'm filming for my membership or whether it's I'm, writing a class for my next in-person class, or whether it's just that I am practicing my Pilates, because Pilates for me has been a recovery. So Pilates is my story. It's my recovery story from having a bad back. So that's definitely that, I would say, fresh air and daylight. Lots of things, as we've been talking before we started recording, that just the holistic approach. So I really try and have a healthy diet. My walking absolutely impacts my back so much. I make sure that I get my steps in each and every day, more at weekends. But just being aware, I think having that awareness about my body, what my body needs, I'm really in tune with my body as far as nutrition and exercise goes. So I think that mind-body aspect, whereas, you don't just put your shoes on, go out, start your day and just expect your body to carry on regardless. Have that awareness of what your body needs, I think, is a really powerful tool.
Yeah, and that's such an important habit and definitely a part of my story and health transformation as well, having that connection and listening to what you need and giving yourself what you need as well, because we can, or most of us, very easily get caught up in the busyness of life that we aren't pausing, we aren't recognising maybe some of those warning signals or signs that might be trying to tell us something isn't quite right. And for me, this topic is very personal because over the past 12 months, I've had problems with my lower back which have resulted in severe pain, which at times has been pretty intense and difficult to deal with. It's caused a lot of limitations in how I've moved from, a day-to-day point of view, and definitely in how I have exercised and moved my body, which for me is also a massive part of maintaining good health. So, that back problem has really impacted me in my overall health and well-being, and definitely the mental side, which I want to explore a bit with you as well. So that's why I'm, really committed to talking about this and bringing this topic out, because that chronic pain that is lasting for some time is something that can just be so physically and emotionally draining and ripple out into the rest of your life. So to kind of get started, I'd love to share a bit about your story and why you are so passionate as well about back pain and helping other people, because it hasn't been easy for you either, has it, over quite a lot of years?
Yeah, exactly. So I started struggling with back pain in my very early 20s. When I look back, I think teenage years, I had sciatica, but I didn't know what that was. So reflecting back, we build our spinal health when we're very young. So our spinal strength, that really core spinal strength, happens in our first school, middle school years. So before we're 12, we really build that solid foundation. I was a really sick child and I was in hospital a lot as a child. And that's meant a lot of time lying in bed. So I didn't get that spinal strength. And then as I went into high school, my sport of choice was hockey. So a lot of forward flexion and rotation, and then also tennis. So lots of rotation. Didn't notice, as things sort of started building and getting achy as I was younger. But then in my mid-20s, I used to play a lot of hockey, went on a camping trip. One day got stuck in a tent for 3 days because my back just locked. That was the first time I knew I had a really big problem. At that time, I was working as a personal trainer and a spin instructor and all the other big, powerful classes that go with it. And that was my love, was my fitness, my exercise. And if I'm really honest, I feel really silly saying this now, but I totally ignored it, completely just ignored the back pain. There would be times I was in the gym and it would just lock me down and I couldn't move, but I still continued to ignore it. Still, I had to be at work, I had to be making money, I was self-employed. And then next time it got really, really bad, I lost the feeling in my left leg. So I was dragging my left leg around. I couldn't really lift it, couldn't move properly with it. So I eventually got an urgent appointment, saw a surgeon who said that the damage to my back looked like I'd been in a high impact car crash. That's the damage that was in my spine. And I ended up having to have spinal fusion surgery to fix it. So in my recovery, because I was such a sporty person, I was determined I would still be active. Everybody just kept mentioning Pilates. And having worked at lots of gyms before, I'd done quite a few Pilates classes, but never really appreciated the benefit of them. And Pilates was my recovery. I had a physio who was really into his Pilates and told me about Pilates, but your physio in recovery, unfortunately, you don't get as much as you probably need. So I researched it. I trained as a Pilates teacher, and now I'm out there trying to make Pilates accessible for everybody, in forms of cost mostly, because it is quite an expensive thing to go and do a Pilates class. But really just the knowledge for people to know that you don't have to be in a Pilates class to do Pilates. So I'm standing up now. I stand up a lot when I work, if I'm doing desk work. And I'm lucky I know the exercises I can do as I'm standing. I know the balances I can do. And I really now try and teach people that, if your barrier is money or if your barrier is time, you don't have to get to a really lovely Pilates studio and do a class for an hour or do a few classes a week, which is what you need to do, really. You don't have to be able to fit that in to have an impact on your back health. Your back health, just like your nutrition, it's about what you do regularly each and every day rather than what you do for an hour a week or what you do for 2 hours a week. So it's about, I really try and get out there and teach as many, many people. I want to have a really big impact on just reducing the amount of back pain that is in this country. Because like you said, when my back was bad and post-surgery as well, the pain levels, it affects every area of your life, your mental health. You suddenly become somebody you don't recognize in the mirror because you're in that much pain. You forget how to smile and it's really hard to live with. And before I, had my surgery, I was working still with this back pain, and people would say, "What's wrong?" And you say, "Oh, I've got a really sore back," and oh, okay, and then they move on. It's nobody, unless they've had it, understands how really, really awful back pain can be. And I remember once, I don't know what it was, probably about 4 months post-surgery, and I just done a Pilates class and I walked out. And for the first time, I felt like myself in years. The first time, probably in about 10 years, that I felt like, oh my goodness, I'm on top of this. I'm on top of this pain and I'm feeling strong and I'm back to the person that I recognize, because it absolutely just takes over your life really when it's really bad. So I really just want to help as many people that have back pain to find Pilates and find how simple it really can be. It is lovely, don't get me wrong. If you've got the time to get to a really lovely studio and do a couple of classes a week, it's such a great way to spend your time and invest in yourself. But if you can't find that time right now, then you can learn how to do Pilates as you're working, as you're shopping, as you're standing in line, as you're doing your housework. It's all about your posture and how you hold yourself. And hopefully over time that leads to prevention. If we can get enough people, using their bodies well, then it can lead to those figures that you mentioned at the beginning, really dropping and less lives being impacted by back pain.
Yeah. And one of the things that is, contributing to the rise in back pain is the way that we live. And you touched on the fact that you're standing at work, and I do usually stand most of the day. I didn't until I got the standing desk about 18 months ago. So like many people, I spend a lot of my working or waking hours working at a desk. And that's life for many, many people. Being stuck at a desk in a seat, often, as you know, through some of the work you do, not in a very good seat and not in a very
Yeah.
good, environment in terms of how they're set up with their screen and their keyboard and their equipment and so on. And then many people get into a car, drive home, come home and sit down and then go to bed and lie down. So the fact that we're generally much more sedentary as a population is also contributing to our back pain, because we are designed as humans to move, aren't we? And yet many of us aren't moving, and that's part of the problem. Yet we've kind of got this belief that we've got to be careful how we move to protect our back, which can do more damage than good, can't it?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you touched on there, as humans, our blueprint is to move. Back in the Stone Age days, we had to get up and go find our food before we could eat anything. Whereas now, just walk down the stairs, open the cupboard, there's our food. And we have a lot less movement moments in our day, which is something when I go into the workplace, I'm always saying to people when I'm coaching workplaces on how to protect against back pain, it's find those movement moments, move whenever you can. Um, and you touched on there, people are sometimes scared to move a certain way, but unless you've been told by a doctor, a surgeon, somebody like that, that you shouldn't move in a certain way, then most movement is really great for the body. And the things that I teach, it's really basic movement. It's just about moving every joint every day. You just said you like to stand up. I like to stand up when I work, but you can't go from sitting all day, well, you could, but from sitting all day to then standing all day, you'll have just as many issues, because your sitting posture probably isn't great, but your standing posture also needs to be good if you're going to stand all day. So it's about learning those different postures, how to carry them through to either sitting or standing. And really, it's about just finding those movement moments. So I'll go in a day from sitting at a desk to standing at my standing desk, to sitting on a yoga ball, to sitting on a floor, making sure I move during my lunch break. But there's so many different ways that you can bring movement into your day. And that's what we need to do. When we think back to our blueprint as humans, the amount we would move compared to how we move now. If you walk into any house, really, there'll be more chairs than there are people. You walk into a room, you expect there to be a chair for you to sit and like lounge on. We don't tend to think about the fact that we could actually stand to eat a meal. I know it might not be socially the norm, but I would love to see more shopping centres, with standing tables rather than sitting tables, giving people the opportunity to stand when they want to. Um, yeah, and just looking out for those movement moments during your day so that you do move more, because being scared of movement, and don't get me wrong, I know there's plenty of people out there who don't like fitness or don't like physical activity. They relate it back to, school days when they hated PE. That's not what we're talking about. Just find something you like to do, go out for a lovely walk, but make sure that you move your body. Sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things you touched on when you were sharing your story, Charlotte, was about that psychological piece with regards to your mental health. And I touched on that as well a bit. how important do you think the mindset is if you do have a problem with your back and you are in pain, it being part of, that plan to heal it, recover and be well and strong again?
Yeah, so a lot of people that come to my classes have either suffered really chronic back pain or had surgery. And of course, there's that huge fear about movement, really huge fear. So I always say to them, I know, you've got to trust me so much to get you to move here. Because when you are in pain, your body does want to lock down and it doesn't really want to move. And it's really putting your trust in somebody doing that movement. But, we do know from research, from all the great medics that are out there, that movement is really, really good for the spine, even when you are in pain. And there's times when you shouldn't move, and there's been times when you were told to be careful of that area. But in general, for the general person, movement is really good. And I always use the analogy of a paper cut. And I always say to people, you get a paper cut, you know how much that hurts. It really hurts, doesn't it? It really annoys you for like 3 days or something before it heals, and your finger really hurts. Or if you've got a mouth ulcer, they're tiny, but they cause you so much pain. So what you have to remember is that damage isn't, there's not a scale where pain equals damage, because a tiny little mouth ulcer or a paper cut can hurt so much. So the pain is your body's way of telling you that there's something going on. But also the brain remembers everything. So if you've had back pain in the past and at the same time you were doing a similar exercise or a similar movement, your brain will tell you not to do that, because our brain's job at the end of the day is to keep us safe and keep us alive. So it's about trusting that that movement's good for you. It's about telling your brain, oh, I know this is going to be good for me. I know I've been in pain doing this movement before, but that's because something else was going on in my body. And if I can build this strength, then it will help me heal in the future. And trying, as we've talked about before when we've met up with each other, but that inner strength, which is mental and physical, it all begins with that inner strength and that confidence. But when you have been in a lot of pain, I mean, oh goodness, I can remember being, quite near rock bottom, I think, at times when I was in just such terrible pain, never know when it's going to end, always thinking you're not going to get back to your normal day-to-day routines. But it touches back on other things as well, where it's what you expect of yourself and setting realistic expectations as well. So taking it one step at a time. If you think you could walk 5 miles, don't walk 5 miles, maybe walk 4 and see how you feel the next day. And just give yourself time, being aware of your body and being a friend to your body as well. So try not to think I should, I must, but what does my body need today? And at the beginning of any class I ever teach, I always say to people, move with whatever level feels right for you today. Not yesterday, not 3 years ago, but today. And that's, I think, how we can try and help ourselves to ease into movement nice and gently.
When I was struggling with my back and going to see the osteopath, she'd said to me, she'd asked, was I under any other stress? What did I have going on in my life? And I think at this point I was maybe a couple of months out from the wedding earlier this year. My back had got quite a bit better. I'd started to exercise, and within maybe 3 or 4 weeks, it just went, and it seemed as bad as it had been 6 months before that. And I said, I don't really feel stressed about the wedding because it's not that kind of wedding. Obviously, we've got a holiday to look forward to, and so on and so on. And anyway, she kept mentioning this and was saying, about the power of your mindset in that recovery process and plan, and focusing on affirmations around how strong I was and so on. And obviously I do that in my coaching as well, but I hadn't really thought about it in terms of what was going on with my back, because I was just thinking about it like many of us do with any pain or injury, in that medical sense of, well, something has caused this, that something has to be fixed. We've got to get right to that physical thing inside of our bodies to fix it. And on the day that we were flying to Vegas for the wedding, I had the problem leading up to that. It had been slightly better the week before, but I got up in the morning and it was so bad. Couldn't bend down. We had a lot of luggage to take with us with the wedding things, and I was so upset. And when we got on the plane at Newcastle to fly to Heathrow, I just started to cry. The emotions were just so much, and I was just in such pain. We were at Heathrow for 5 hours. It was awful. And I'd bought lots of painkillers and heat patches and everything, thinking, how am I going to sit on this fly for 11 hours? And when I woke up the next morning, hardly had any back pain at all. And I only had 2 full days before the wedding day. And the next day, I said to Kev, I feel as though like the pain's almost gone. I've got this little thing around my right hip. And yes, it's not perfect. It's not like a miracle overnight, but the pain is really gone. Anyway, fast forward to coming home and how I felt. In the back pain, it just completely shifted. And when I went to see the osteopath on that first visit back from the holiday and wedding, she just had this smile and said, just this feeling that there was also a lot of stress in the body and worry and connection. And she said, there's still stuff to work on around where the problem area was. But I really believe that mindset piece and the way you were thinking about it was so important. And I've heard other people talk about that as well. And I'm not saying you can heal yourself with positive thought, but it's part of the toolkit you need, isn't it, to really support yourself and give yourself what you need. And it's funny, I've since had some treatment and I've been seeing a physio at the hospital, and he's took a very different approach with how I need to recover and being really positive and about that whole mindset. And it's making such a difference as well. And I think that's part of what we need to overcome, because it's kind of linked to how we just think we can go and be however we want to be in our life and not give thought to that preventative side of health and how we want to live, and just have to do it when something goes wrong. And then it's about trying to fix it. But because we don't have that knowledge from the onset, we are often fighting, like firefighting, aren't we, when we get into that place of something needing attention because it's gone wrong.
Yeah, definitely. And the stress factor that you mentioned there, the body, it's been proven the body holds on to stress. So it holds on to physical stress. We know it holds on to mental stress, but your body holds on to physical stress as well. And many people that come into my classes with back pain, I can look at them and I just know that stress is a massive factor in their lives. But it's really hard because sometimes when you mention that to people, it can come across that maybe you're saying, like, old fashioned, it would be like, oh, it's in your head. I think that's what people used to get told. It doesn't mean that you're imagining it. It just means that everything that's going on in your life is having an impact in your body. And why wouldn't it? Your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, they're part of who you are. Your arms, your legs, your back, it's part of who you are. So, of course, our pain in our body could be related to pain that we're feeling in our mind. And I think more and more now people are becoming much more accepting of the fact that we need to nurture our holistic health. Because you've got a back problem, it doesn't mean the problem is in the back. In fact, many people that have back pain, undiagnosed back pain in the UK, will go and see a doctor. They'll see a physio, they'll get sent for an MRI, and nothing shows up. And at that point, people can mentally hit rock bottom a bit with their pain, because they think, how can they say there's nothing wrong? Do another test, find something that's wrong, because we're often looking for this physical damage. Because I think we're more aligned to thinking, well, if there's something physically there, it's easier to put right, but not necessarily the truth. And preventative medicine is fantastic, all the social prescribing work that's done out there, and everybody who's there trying to help people with prevention. But again, like you said, everyone is so busy. Finding the time to do things we need to do is one thing. Finding the time to do something that's going to benefit us possibly years later, it's really hard to get people to switch on to that. But I think being aware of your mental health and knowing when you're feeling stressed is one of the best things you can do. By recognizing there's an issue there now, knowing that if you work on that, it will prevent pain in the future, and it'll increase your ability to get over damage and pain and illness in the future. And I like to think that a lot more people are really coming around to that idea now. And that is why in any class that I ever teach, there's always a breathwork session. There's always an element of my classes where it's that mind-body recognition. And I think for anyone who's listening, I think naturally I'm a very Zen person, but I try to be more Zen, and especially as I've found Pilates. Yeah, but as I'm on this journey of, really embracing Pilates and the strength that gives me, I really feel that my mindset is growing with it. And for anybody who doesn't really think they know what a mind-body connection is, or people who say, oh, I can't do that. I've tried mindfulness, I've tried meditation, it doesn't work. In my classes, I give people a really simple thing they can do, which a lot of people can do. So if you don't know what a mind-body connection is and you don't think you know how to find it, the thought around it is, if you can be aware of your body, then you can recognize when there's a bit of tension in my shoulder, or oh, my back's feeling stiffer today. But so many people are so busy in this day and age that they just plow on with their life and ignore all the niggles. But a great thing you can do is pay attention to your feet. So our feet have just as many like nerve endings as our hands. They're really integral to our postural health, and we can feel so much in our feet. So my first tip is to walk around wherever you live with bare feet. And don't just walk around, but start to pay attention. Does the floor feel cold? Does the floor feel warm? Am I on a carpet? Am I on a tiled floor? And then starting to scrunch your toes and think, oh, how can I move my toes? Your toes, your feet can actually move in really similar ways to your hands, but because we just shove them in shoes and walk on and get on with our day every day, we don't pay attention to our feet. But then if you really want to go a little bit more and have a little bit more homework, as you're walking down the street, feeling that connection with the ground, so that heel, middle of the foot, push off my toes. Just saying it in your head, heel, middle of my foot, push off my toes. Feeling how your feet feel in your shoes. Have they got room, or are they restricted? Can you spread your feet? Can you feel if you're walking on grass? Can you feel if you're walking on tarmac? Just paying attention to your feet, thinking about your feet with your mind, can really start to connect your mind and your body. And I think for anyone who's listening to this that just thinks that isn't me, I couldn't do Pilates, I couldn't be mindful and think about my body, just thinking about your feet. And if you're not somebody who walks, you could think about it just by pressing your hands, maybe along a surface at the same time, and thinking like, is this hot? Is this cold? How does this surface feel? Running your hands along the side in your kitchen or along a chair, and just paying attention to those thoughts and feelings in your hands and your feet can really start to connect you with your body. And that's a great place, because that helps your mind. If you can start to think and feel within your own body, then you're not ignoring it anymore, and it helps you to connect with all the feelings you have in your body, and then you can start to become aware of where you might need to do a little bit more work.
Oh, that's brilliant advice. I've never heard anyone talk about it like that. So yeah, that's something every one of us can do. No cost, no time really, because you're just doing it as you're walking around doing something else. So you touched on your journey into Pilates and mentioned that you used to be PT and you do all of the typical classes, the high impact stuff and spin. And that was something you and I really wanted to bring into this conversation around exercise, and how most of us think that we need to exercise hard to look a certain way. We've got that story fed into us, generally as women when we're young, that we need to be a certain size and shape to be worthy, to be good enough, and then that will bring us confidence, etc., and so on. And for many women, as they reach midlife, and I'm included in this, that way of exercising often has to shift because of some of the changes we start to see in perimenopause. But also, whether you see it because you do start experiencing some kind of pain or maybe other symptoms that limit the movement you've perhaps done in the past, it is a time when we do need, if we aren't already, to shifting towards this more strength-based way of moving, of which Pilates can be a really beneficial, as we're saying, for our core and our back and so on. So yeah, I'd love to just explore a bit about that, because how was that for you, switching from being in that mode of, high intensity cardio type of workouts to really slowing it down?
Yeah, so it was really tough in the beginning, because I think whatever your journey, wherever you are at midlife, wherever you find yourself, and I'm in that box too, um, you always compare yourself to when where you were when you were 20. So, I used to come home and from the gym and be like, oh, I couldn't lift as much weight today. And then my husband would go, yeah, but you're not 21 anymore. And I would be comparing myself to, years and years ago. And I think it is a hard acceptance, like you said, for all the reasons that we never want to age, and we never want to admit that we're, finding things difficult. And, we always feel we've got to do those workouts that we've been told, and the Lord forbid we put on any weight or anything like that. So for me, I think perhaps it was a bit different to other people's journey because I had that moment where things had to stop and I had to have surgery. It was almost forced upon me. And then when I came out of that, I don't mind admitting I was terrified of ruining the new back I'd been given. So I had spinal fusion from L4 to S1, and recovering from that has been the most painful thing I've ever done. I've had a child and I would rather give birth 10 times. And I know everyone has different journeys with that as well. But honestly, the pain level for months after, the nerve pain in my legs, lying awake at night, just being in absolute agony. It's the hardest thing I've ever recovered from. So I was more on the side of being scared to go back into exercise. And it actually took me quite a long time to move beyond walking, to trust in my body, although my surgeon was telling me, you can't break this. I've fused your spine, you cannot break it. I was terrified of something going wrong, meaning I had to have that done again. So I was very cautious going into it. However, the mental aspect of that was, I used to love the high impact workouts, the ones that make you really bright red and hot and sweaty. And I sort of grown up thinking that's just what you had to do. I can honestly say right now, I feel stronger than I've ever felt. And that's because when I was doing all of those things, I had a really weak core. And I always knew there was this weakness in my body. It always used to ping and just remind me it was there. And although I could lift weights, I knew there was a weakness in my core. My technique wasn't fantastic because that weakness was there. Whereas I think, and I don't want everyone listening to have to go and have surgery for this, but if you can just come to a place where you think, right, I'm gonna reinvent myself here, and I'm gonna do what my body needs, and that's what I had to do at that time, was listen to my body, listen to my mind as well. So I had massive fears in my mind about exercising. I had, a body that felt a lot weaker than it had ever felt because I was always strong. But building myself back, rehabilitating with Pilates has just meant now that I have this strong core. I know whatever I do, I've got this foundational strength. There's way different levels of Pilates. I tend to teach very beginners Pilates, and I practice up to about intermediate Pilates. So my passion is getting people to trust and like Pilates. So I tend to teach beginners a lot. And also because I think with the empathy that I can have with them, anyone who's been through back pain, they put their trust in me to take them on that journey. But I think wherever you are, the first thing is not to compare yourself, not to listen to the shoulds and musts and all the things you think you have to do. But let's face it, we're all not here for a long time, and this is our time on the planet. And I'm a huge believer in finding something you enjoy. I know many, many people, clients, friends that have gone on a journey of signing up to, a gym HIIT session boot camp 3 or 4 times a week. And yeah, they've stuck it out and they've done really well for 3 or 4 months, maybe. But then, they've just gone backwards because they just can't keep that level up. They're at midlife. They're completely fatigued. They're doing it because they're reading that's what they should be doing as they're going through the menopause or perimenopause. Just cannot keep it up. And there's so much different advice out there, but I'm a real believer in holistic exercise, and I love being outdoors. I do have a gym membership. Actually, I just cancelled it last month because I just don't go, because I just love being indoors. I still love the gym. I still love the pool, but my training has changed so much to the point where I know my limits. I don't push myself beyond them. In fact, perhaps I'm a bit cautious and I stay within them because I want to be well for every day. I want to be able to do what I can do every day and what I enjoy every day. But that's where it comes back to that mind-body connection, because if you can understand how your body's feeling on that day, there might be some days where I'm like, oh, I need a really good weight session today. And I get down the gym and I do a really good weight session. But there's a lot of days where I feel like a gentle swim in the pool rather than really, really powering up and down the lane as fast as I can. There's a lot of days where I'll do my Pilates and I'll go out for a lovely long walk. And I've got to say, I love a gym session. I love a pool session. But the days where I'm outside and I'm doing something I love, I'm maybe walking with a friend or just walking in, a local beach or something. And I do my Pilates. They're the days where I know I've nurtured myself. I haven't just gone out and exercised for the sake of ticking a box, but I've nurtured myself physically and mentally. And then that just makes you stronger throughout. So I would always say to people, if you don't enjoy it, ask yourself why you're doing it. And if it's because you think you should, there will be an alternative that feels better for you physically and mentally.
And that's the key that you started with about that mind-body connection, and really listening to what you need, but also recognizing what you've given yourself when you are doing something. And is that right for you? Does that feel good? Because part of the challenge why many women are unhealthy is that they aren't approaching health in the right way. They're approaching it with restriction, with deprivation, with denial, and the shoulds. Like, I should work out, I should do a class, I should go to the gym, I should be sweating and out of breath, otherwise I haven't worked hard, and posting, the calories burned on the device watch and so on. And yet that isn't, as you said, coming together in this holistic umbrella-like approach to taking care of yourself that is really giving you what you need in terms of who you are as a person, your values and likes and so on, but also as a human, that we need a bit of everything. And I know sometimes it can then feel overwhelming. I think, well, I have to do a bit of strength, and I have to do a bit of cardio, and I have to eat well, and I have to sleep, and I have to manage stress, and there's so much. But it is about creating your toolkit for you where you are now. And a bit like in your story, that changes as you change through life and different things happen, and likewise as your hormones start to change in perimenopause and so on. So yeah, I think trying to adjust to where you are in your life and what you need, and building the right habits for that, which, I definitely support that being things that do get your heart rate up, like you said with walking. Walking's so powerful if you aren't just sauntering along on the same flat route for 20 minutes every day to try and hit your step count, or maybe more than 20 minutes. But, put banks in, put steps in, power walk, get your arms and shoulders going and so on, and use those glutes and really fire it up. But doing something to get your heart rate going. But the strength piece is really important, and that core piece. I liked what you said about you knew that you weren't someone who had a strong core, and that's me. I've had back problems without being anything significant or something that I even really knew what it was, but just problems with my back now for well over 20 years, probably 22, 24 years was when my back problems started. And I had my first MRI scan, which didn't really find anything of significance at all. And yet I've hammered the exercise and tried to, beast the gym, as they say, because my goal used to be, have to lose weight, have to look thinner, and then I'm going to like myself, be happier and more confident. And that's been a huge learning journey for me as well. That strong is so much better in every way than just focusing on the way that you look in the mirror. Because many times, you said, people get there, they can't maintain it, and they might look in the mirror and know they look different, smaller, for want of a better word, but it doesn't mean that they look in the mirror and see a happy person who's healthy as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's just about finding what's right for you. But you can't really, I don't think it's possible to separate the physical and the mental. And that's why I think when people find Pilates, so I go into a lot of workplaces and I teach posture. I call it posture for performance. Sometimes we call it Pilates, depending on what the workplace is. But I'll go in and I'll teach like how to sit and stand well at work to prevent against back pain. But then we lead into a bit of a Pilates session. And the amount of people who, yes, they say they feel taller, their backs feel better. It can bring about quite a lot of emotion, because so many people have never stopped and thought about their bodies for half an hour even. And some people get quite emotional. Some people are just amazed at how even just focusing on their body for that time rather than focusing on work can make them feel better. And that's because they're not used to practicing mindfulness, or just being free of other thoughts. So when you do something new, so when you do Pilates for the first time, you're focusing on the instructor and how you're moving. So it is actually mindful. But the amount of people who just say they just have clarity of mind and feel just so clear and free, and then go back and be more productive after it, is because they've never moved in that way. They've never thought in that way. And I always challenge people we do a bit of a breathing session where you focus on how your ribcage moves, for example, when you breathe, and the amount of people who've never thought about that. Or, can you breathe into the back of your lungs rather than into the top of your lungs? And making people aware of their bodies can be really emotional. And I think that's because, as you said, a lot of people are just living in their bodies, ignoring the pain and just we're all on that fast track of having to work, having to earn, being really busy. But the moment people stop and they realise there's another way, and that's the message I always try and get out. It doesn't mean you're going to lose strength. If you change your training, it doesn't mean you're going to lose strength. It just means you're going to gain strength in different ways. So there is a place for the gym. There is a place for classes. There's a place for any exercise that you like, as long as you're listening to your body and you're not fighting against your body. But I think there's a lot of people out there who are fighting against their body. So they're forcing themselves to do sessions that they think they should be doing, and possibly not helping themselves mentally. I think there is always a bit of a surge of hormones and a rush after you do any exercise. And I don't think many people regret exercise once they've done it. It's not often a regret. You usually feel great, but there can be, a regret the next day, or aches and pains if you forced an injury that is genuinely injured. A few aches and pains the next day when you've moved differently is quite normal. But if you're ignoring an injury like I did with my back and it's really flaring up for weeks afterwards, then you have to just stop and think, what am I doing? And is there another way? And there usually is another way too. I train now, it's unrecognizable to how I used to train, but I feel so strong. And I know that I'm safe because I don't go doing I don't lift anything that's too heavy. So lifting weights is still great for you, but I would push myself way too far and without a good posture, which is really important. But it's just, recognizing where you are, where you need to be, and know that there's many, many roads to get there. It doesn't have to be the same. And as we age, as we hit menopause, then I think that's a time when a lot of people do reflect on change because it's happening within you and something is happening. So it's a great time to reflect and think, what habits am I bringing forward into this period of time that I've just gained and I don't even know where they came from. I don't even know if they're healthy for me. I don't know if they're making me happy. It's a great time to sit and maybe journal about your habits and about your working, your ways of working, your exercising, your nutrition. It's a great time to sit and think, how is this serving me? And is it going to continue to serve me, or do I need to change something? So it's when people in the fitness industry, New Year's always massive, isn't it? People are always saying, oh, in the new year, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do this. And I always say to all of my clients, your new year can start right now. It can be a year from today that you reflect on your goals. It doesn't have to be January the 1st. There's never a bad time to stop and reflect on your health, your whole health, and think about, what am I doing for my body today? How did it go? How did it serve me? What am I doing for my mind today? How did it go? How did it serve me? And just taking action to change it tomorrow.
Because as you said, we do have one short life, and I think most of us look forward in terms of the timeline, but also in terms of the expectation of what we'll have when we're older and the enjoyment we'll get when we do stop working. So we look forward to that time and see ourselves possibly travelling, spending time with our family, grandkids maybe, moving around. And if you think about, actually, I'm going to throw this challenge out. As you go about the rest of your day, having listened to this, think about everything you do and how you're using your body as you do it. So whether it's, opening the car, sitting in the car, driving the car, cooking the evening meal, getting into bed, having a shower, like just everything requires you to physically move, and your back is involved in that. And so to make sure that the rest of our life is as full as it can be for as long as possible, we do need to be nurturing ourselves and protecting our body. And for women, especially, this is so important through menopause and then beyond, because if the hormonal changes, that mean our bones aren't as strong and dense, our muscles aren't as strong. So we have to move and build strength to be able to be that way throughout the rest of our lives. So just to kind of start to wrap us up, I know you've given some great insights and tips, but I'd love to hone in on 3 steps someone listening could take if we think about that perimenopause midlife phase and how women can really focus on building that whole strength and focus on that inner strength mindset piece as well to be strong as we move through menopause.
For me, I think being intentional is such a powerful tool. So with the busyness of life at the moment, with how just fast life is moving. Time flies anyway, but when you're so busy and you forget to stop and reflect, then it goes even quicker. And expecting different things but doing the same thing, it never works. So journaling, I think, just stopping every evening, thinking about what went well for you today, and writing down a plan to continue that. Thinking about what didn't go well, whether it's with thoughts, feelings, your body, your nutrition, if you slipped off like a healthy eating plan that you're trying to stick to, or if you didn't get your steps in today, whatever didn't go well, make an intentional plan for that to go better tomorrow. Think about what you want to improve in. And then the last thing I always do is congratulate myself on what did go well, on what I did well, on the good choices I made. Those positive thoughts, that positive energy going into my body before I go to sleep, and planning to repeat that tomorrow. And I think that's something I've really learned over the last few years, is about being intentional with my actions and my thoughts. As far as movement goes, I would say similarly, think about the movement that you're doing. Nicola, you just made a great point. Everything we do requires movement, and it requires back health. Believe me, if you're in back pain, brushing your teeth is agony. You can't even put on your shoes. If you don't live with somebody, it's a nightmare because you just cannot get your own shoes on. So we use our bodies all the time. We need that back strength. If you haven't built any core strength training into your movement, then I would highly recommend that you do. Like I said, I teach how you can do this. Just even in doing the hoovering, you can use your posture better and build back strength. Everybody that comes to my classes we always do some sitting exercises. Learning to sit on the floor and sit well is a great way to train your posture and your core strength. So if you're having time out and you're watching something on the TV in the evening, you can sit on the floor with a great posture and train your core at the same time. So there are ways you can do things that can help you move forward stronger. So I would definitely say, get that mind-body connection, start to think and feel about your mind and body and connect them, and write it down. I think when you write anything down, it makes it more real. It helps you have a plan of how you're going to change things. And then be kind to yourself, because you have to be kind to yourself. We're all kind to other people, but we really have to be internally kind to ourselves with our thoughts and our actions. And I think journaling, it's such a powerful tool that I would highly recommend people do. And I can't advocate enough how much I think, Pilates is a great form of exercise, especially, we're talking about it for it to be Back Hair Awareness Week. Our backs need it. You can do it in a chair, you can do it standing up, you can do it as you walk along. It's a lovely treat if you can get to a regular class. But if you can't, then just learn about how you can build a good centering foundation for your posture and your core strength. And then you can carry that with you everywhere you go, and you can continue to build it as you get older. It's not going to decline if you don't let it. And likewise, carrying that into everyday life as we age. There are direct studies that show the ability to get up and down out of a chair is directly correlated to how long we're predicted to live. So keeping that lower body strength, keeping our core strength, it's so important so that we can carry on our lives, enjoying every day and being mobile.
And that's what we all want, isn't it, for ourselves and to be around for our families and so on. And I think for me, you've just kind of re-highlighted what I have not given enough focus to as I'm rehabilitating with my back and strength, is the everyday normal things. I love what you've said about hoovering and having that core strength being worked on at the same time, and in other normal things in life. So I think I definitely need to get some tips from you on how I can do that as well, because I'm trying to shift my own mindset from being based around that movement of high intensity, high impact, really energetic type of workouts, to slower, more strength, more mind-body connection. But I also need to add in on top of that everyday stuff like how I stand and work or sit and work. So lots of great tips there, and everything you've said, which will wrap up in the notes as well. And you can check social media if you want to see how we kind of cut these tips and share them and so on, is stuff that doesn't really cost anything. Yes, a bit of time to journal, to note, even if you don't want to write, but to think about it. But it's all stuff that you can build in without having to be an expert in anything or pay for equipment or membership as such. However, if you do want to check out Charlotte's membership. I will pop the details into the show notes. So just share a little bit about that actually, Shal, because you've made this membership online. It's very accessible, very low cost. You're giving a lot of value. As you said, not everyone can get to a studio, whether it's time, affordability, location, and so on. And I think there's a lot of apprehension as well about, can I do it? Well, if you're not very flexible, I always used to worry about going to a Pilates class and think, can't even touch my toes. I'm going to look like a right idiot.
Yeah, exactly. And believe me, it's not about touching your toes. It's about moving your spine well. And there's a starting point for everyone. So everybody listening will be fine. So yeah, I am on social media at Charlotte Wood Pilates. I do have a membership which I set up. It started out just as an extension of people that come to my classes that wanted more than just the weekly classes. Because as I said, your weekly class is great, but it's what you do all the time. So in my membership, there are classes from 2 minutes up to 45 minutes, and you come in and you select the time you've got, and there's a video there for you. It is actually, at the moment, it's just been taken down for a few months while I rebuild it on a different host.
Mm-hmm.
But it's going to come back bigger, better and stronger. I just couldn't, it was on just a host that couldn't host it as well as I needed it to. So it's just being rebuilt at the moment. It will be reopened in October. So I'm happy to receive inquiries off people and get on calls with people. But yeah, it's a Pilates membership. It's very gentle Pilates, beginners up to intermediates. There are classes on the mat. There's classes in a chair and there's classes in standing. I make sure I try and offer classes for everybody. So I always say I teach everyday Pilates to every back that wants to move. And I'm out there to really just try and get as many people as possible to try Pilates. So it will be open again from October. Happy to get on calls with people to talk about it. But I'm on Instagram at Charlotte Wood Pilates. I'm on Facebook, charlottewoodpilates.com. And my free Facebook group where I give tips every week is called the Happy Back Pilates Club, because that's what I'm trying to do, build happy backs all around for everybody. And next week, this week with being Back Care Awareness Week, I'm going to be putting lots of tips in. I've got lots of videos that are going to go in with like how to hoover and look after your back as you're hoovering, and how you should stand when you brush your teeth, things like that. So the more fun ones like that will be probably housed on Instagram, but I'll be putting them everywhere. So if you want tips, then you can just look on those. Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. I'll check those out. And I'm in Charlotte's free Facebook group as well. So definitely check that out, maybe as a starting point, and then she'll be sharing once the membership's open again if you're interested in that. But thank you so much for coming on, sharing everything that you have. As we started with, it's an important thing to be aware of. If you haven't had back pain, I wouldn't necessarily think of yourself as lucky. I'd think of yourself as, okay, now's the time to start to protect it, because those numbers mean many of us will get it. And definitely for me, as I've gone through my journey over the last year, I've really looked forward to as I age and think, imagine if I was 70 having this pain, how much more difficult it would be. I don't want to be in that position. So, I want to build that strong back now to mean that I don't end up where when I get back pain at a much older age, it becomes really difficult, if not impossible, to recover from it. So, make now the time that you kind of put a stake in the ground and go, yep, I'm going to protect my health, my back, my strength, so that I can live a full, great life. So yeah, I think just brilliant to bring the topic and gain more awareness on back strength and health.
Thanks, Nicola. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you're so welcome.